On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC heavyweight title fight headlining UFC 309 November 16th, Madison Square Garden, between Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. And if you never watched the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles. Then I'm going to give you my pick and prediction at the end. Some of the stuff you may agree with, you may not, doesn't matter. I want to get your prediction after watching this video and hear how you think this fight's going to go. I think I know where most people are going on this one. And by the way, my name is James Lynch. I'm posting content on this channel almost every single day. Let's do a quick tail of the tape between these two. You can see Jon Jones, currently 37 years old. Stipe Miocic, 42 years old. 6'4" apiece. They're both 6'4". 84.5 inch reach for Jon Jones. 80 inch reach for Stipe Miocic. So if you're looking at there, Jones with a bit of a reach advantage. They're the same height, and Jones a little bit younger as well. 27-1 record compared to 20-4. Let's start first with the current UFC heavyweight champion Jon Jones and look at all of his accolades, and then we'll talk about which way I'm going on this one. Okay, so Jon Jones, I mentioned it there, going to be making the first defense of his heavyweight title. That's right, he won the heavyweight title over Ciryl Gane, the vacant title, and this will be his first title defense despite winning that title last March, I should say. I mentioned it there. Jones is 27-1 with one no contest, 37 years old, 6'4", with an 84.5 inch reach. So he's got a 4.5 inch reach advantage. He's also 5 years younger than Stipe Miocic. He's the former light heavyweight champions at BJJ Purple Belt. He's won the UFC light heavyweight championship 2 times. He's had 11 successful title defenses. He's had, the list goes on of all the things that he's done. He's been the longest UFC light heavyweight champion, 1,501 days. He's got knockout of the night against Brandon Vera, got submission of the night against Ryan Bader and Vitor Belfort. He's got performance of the night one time against Daniel Cormier. Jones did not have an amateur debut, went straight to the pros in April of 2008, made his UFC debut not that much longer after that. He was only had 6 fights, then got signed to the UFC, fought Andre Gusmao in his UFC debut, and like I said, did not have an amateur career, went straight to the pros. Jones overall in the UFC is 23-1 with one no contest. He's got 11 finishes in his UFC career. Some notable wins. There's a whole bunch here. Mauricio Shogun Hua, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Alexander Gustafsson twice, Glover Teixeira, Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, and Ciryl Gane. His only loss is Matt Hamill. I know everyone, it wasn't really a loss. Should have been a DQ. There was a legal downward elbow. So realistically, Jones hasn't really lost. Although we'll talk about the Reyes fight because I know a lot of people felt like he did lose that fight. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Jones has had obviously some issues with USADA. He had the injury against Daniel Cormier prior to UFC 178. So he has missed a bit of time. But yeah, the UFC, not people forget. I was going to say UFC 200 was probably the most notable pullout that he had way back in 2016. Where am I looking here? Not April, it would have been July. Yeah, there we go. UFC 200. Jones had that failed drug test. So there's always going to be some questions around Jon Jones and his USADA issues. Not really here to talk about that. We're just talking about what we see in the cage here as far as a prediction and breakdown. Jones has had a lot of layoffs in his career. Actually, one of the biggest ones, and a lot of this is USADA related, contract related. But let's go through these real quick. So going from Daniel Cormier to OSP, right? The fight that he ended up having which fight was that? That was so the first Cormier fight, there was a 476-day layoff. Going from OSP to Daniel Cormier, the rematch, there was a 462-day layoff. Going from Cormier to Gustafsson, there was a 518-day layoff. And then going from Dominic Reyes to Ciryl Gane, remember there's some contract issues and all that stuff. Him, moving up to heavyweight, there was a 1,120-day layoff. And then going into this fight, there's a 623-day layoff. So no stranger to layoffs for Jon Jones, but again, he had that big layoff in the biggest layoff of his career was in his last fight, and he ended up winning it in the very first round. Jones has had a couple close fights. Let's go over those quickly. Again, we're going to use MMA decisions as our mark here in terms of, fights that people talk about with Jon Jones that could have gone either way. So UFC 165, I was actually there cage side for that one. If you go look on MMAdecisions.com, only one media member scored the fight for Jon Jones. Everyone else scored it for only one media member scored the fight for Gustafsson. 13 media members scored the fight for Jones. Why don't I just show you? That'll be better than me just blabbing off here. So if you look at it there, Jon Jones defeating Gustafsson at UFC 165, you'll see, and granted, not as many people were voting on this back in the day. This was back in 2013, but if you look at it, 13 media members scoring the fight for Jones, just one for Gustafsson. The other fight that people talk about is the Thiago Santos fight. We'll go to that one. You can look at it there. 14 media members scoring the fight for Jones, just 4 scoring it for Santos. That was at UFC 239 back in 2019. And then probably the most controversial one that people talk about, the Dominic Reyes fight, which again, people are very split on. This was one where people felt like it should have gone the other way. That was at UFC 247, February of 2020. 7 media members scoring the fight for Jones, 14 scoring it for Reyes. So just keep that in mind. Some people feeling like Reyes should have got the nod there. Yeah, it was close. It was definitely close. I will admit that, and the data sort of proves that. Let's look at the stats for Jon Jones going into this fight. Go to UFC stats to have a look at that, and we'll look at some of his accolades there. Significant strikes landed per minute, 4.29. His striking accuracy at 57%. His striking defense is at 64%. Jones doesn't get hit that much. Maybe the Gustafsson, the first fight, was probably the one he was hit the most. Takedown average is 1.93. His takedown defense is at 95%. That's interesting. And his takedown accuracy is at 45%, but that's pretty low for most fighters. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about Jon Jones. Dana White calls him the pound for pound best, the GOAT, all that. You can see why with, the resume that he's had, but let's now talk about the former heavyweight champion, Stipe Miocic, going to be making a long-awaited return. So I mentioned it there. He's 20-4. He's 42 years old. He's 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. Going to have no significant advantages on paper, age, height, reach-wise in this fight. He's a number 8th ranked UFC heavyweight. When these two were supposed to fight the first time, I believe he was ranked number 3. So took a bit of a dip, which I don't blame. I mean, I've had this rule anyways. I've said this before. If you're out of the rankings, if you haven't fought in over a year, you should be out of the rankings. It's just taking up space for other people. So yeah, he's currently ranked number 8th. He's the former NCAA Division I wrestler. He trains at a strong style fight team. He's the 2-time UFC heavyweight champion. He's had 4 successful title defenses. He's tied with Randy Couture for most wins in UFC heavyweight title fights at 6. He's also got the most finishes in UFC heavyweight title fights at 4. He's got fight of the night 3 times against Stefan Struve, Junior Dos Santos, and Alistair Overeem. He's got performance of the night 5 times against Fabio Maldonado, Andre Arlovsky, Fabricio Verdum, Junior Dos Santos, and Daniel Cormier. He's got knockout of the 9 one time against Phil DeFries. And he's got the most post-fight bonuses in UFC heavyweight division history at 9. Stipe made his amateur debut way back in August of 2006. Made his pro debut in February of 2010. Made his UFC debut in October of 2011. Where are we here? Beating Joey Beltran. He's 14-4 in the UFC. He's got 9 stoppage victories. Some notable wins include Roy Nelson, Gabriel Gonzaga, Mark Hunt, Andre Arlovsky, Fabricio Verdum, Alistair Overeem, Junior Dos Santos, Francis Ngannou, and Daniel Cormier. He's got 2 wins over him. His losses include Stefan Struve, Junior Dos Santos, Daniel Cormier, and most recently, Francis Ngannou. That was his last fight. He's had a couple layoffs himself, going from Roy Nelson to Gabriel Gonzaga. There was a 224-day layoff. JDS to Ngannou. There was the first Ngannou fight, I should say. There's a 252-day layoff. Going from Daniel Cormier, the second fight, to the third fight, there was a 406-day layoff. Actually, sorry, it was the first Cormier fight to the second one. There was a 406-day layoff. And going into this fight, Stipe will have the longest layoff of his career, 1,330 days going into this fight. So not good for a fighter who is, like I said, 42 years old. The only close fight he's had was that first JDS fight, which was back at, that was the UFC on Fox 13 card. 11 media members scored the fight for JDS, 1 scored it a draw, and 5 scored it for Stipe Miocic. So a majority still thought that JDS won. Let's look at the stats for Stipe in this one. You can see significant strikes landed per minute, 4.82, so similar numbers to Jones. His striking accuracy is at 53%. His takedown or striking defense is at 54%. His takedown average is 1.86. His takedown accuracy is at 34%. His takedown defense is at 68%. Not as good as Jones. We'll see if there's any takedowns in this fight. And if we go look at the odds right now, you'll see Jones a sizable favorite. Some books having him almost minus 500. Stipe plus 330. And if you look at the fan voting on here, which again you can do for free, 87% of fans picking Jones, just 13% picking Miocic. So without further ado, don't think I'm doing any rocket science here. I am going to be taking Jon Jones in this fight, but I'm not taking him to finish quick. I'm actually going to go with a 3rd round TKO victory. So here's how I came to that conclusion. If you look at Jones's career, 37% of his wins by KO TKO, 37% by decision. I might have said when this fight was supposed to happen last year, I might have gone decision there because it wasn't as long of a layoff. But I mean, I think at this point, Jones probably is going to finish within 5 rounds. You'd have to think with the fact that Stipe's older, Jones is going to be faster, I would argue. And again, I think Jones, like I said, most of his wins are by knockout. Stipe's never been submitted. So it's possible it could happen here in a scenario where maybe Jones knocks him down and submits him, but I think Stipe's got a good enough ground game where he's not going to get submitted here. So I'm going to lean more towards the KO TKO. How I see it happening is Jones, like I said, is going to be piecing up Stipe. And as the fight goes on, I think Jones is going to be faster. He's going to get that takedown and he's going to get a TKO finish via ground and pound. He doesn't have one punch knockout power like a Francis Ngannou does, which was how Stipe lost his last fight, was a second round knockout there. I don't think Jones has the same power as Francis. Maybe he does, but again, we have such a small sample size of Jones at heavyweight. I just don't think that, and even at light heavyweight, I mean, we didn't see a lot of like one punch knockout power from Jones. It was more the TKO finishes more often than that. I mentioned Stipe's never been submitted. Three of Jones's last 4 fights have gone to the scorecards. So that's Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, Dominic Reyes. I would argue to some degree that Stipe is better than all these guys just because he was a long-reigning heavyweight champion, but he's also way older than these fighters too. So like I said, I don't think Jones will go the distance. I might actually look at that over just in case. I think people are just assuming because of what Jones did to Cyril Gane that it's going to be another quick finish. But I mean, Stipe is a much better, more well-rounded fighter than Cyril Gane is. He's obviously older, but I don't think you just lose all those skills just because you get older. Now the layoff's a concern, obviously, and everything else. But I think Stipe will last a little bit longer. So I'm going to go, like I said, 3rd round TKO. I don't think it's going to be like a 1st round finish for Jones. I might look at some of the totals in this one because, again, I do think this will go a little bit longer. And it might even be a later finish. But my official pick is going to be Jon Jones, 3rd round TKO. He's going to win, successfully have the title defense he wants, and then we can finally move along with the heavyweight division with Tom Aspinall because I feel like he's the real champ. And I think Jones, this is a fight that, I think only Jon Jones's camp, Stipe Miocic, and Dana White won. I think everyone else is kind of like, okay, we're done with this. Let's see Aspinall move along with his interim championship, what I think most people feel like is the real champion. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Which way are you leaning on this one? Let's put it this way. If you're picking Stipe, speak now. How do you think he wins? How do you think he beats Jones? I think 90% of people, or 88%, I guess, if we're going by typology, is most likely going to be going with Jon Jones in this fight. So I'm not expecting any, like I said, any crazy takes here. But if you are going for Stipe, speak now. Would love to hear your prediction. And let me know how you think Jones finishes this fight. I think most people do expect to finish. If there's anyone who thinks Jones' decision, would love to hear you too. Again, I do the show almost every week. If there's any other notable fights you want me to preview, let me know. But I typically do main events, title fights, things like that. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on the next edition of Early Look.